Hey, everybody, welcome back to Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast covering the Las Vegas Raiders, also heard by our audience in Las Vegas on, of course, KDON 101.5 FM and 98.5 The Bet, both Odyssey stations. Hope you're listening to them. Hearty hello to our video audience. Of course, our video always brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. And at BetUS, guess what? We're giving you a 150% sign-up bonus. Woo! Get ready for the weekend's action. Use promo code YouTube150. That means you deposit $100, you're getting $150. I mean, listen to this. This is great. Sign-up bonus. You got to use that code YouTube150 when you do it. And by the way, also with that, you get 125% on your second and third deposits. All of these up to $2,000 as well from our friends at BetUS. So go ahead and make sure you do that. I mean, you don't want to pass up on that. But we are back. Scott Branson, along with my good friend Mo Moten, my partner here. He is the NFL senior writer over at Bleacher Report. You can also catch his Raiders content at sportsnot.com, where he's a columnist there as well. And follow him on x.com at Mo Moten, M-O-E-M-O-T-O-N, known to as Midtown Mo to us. You can also follow me on X, LV Gully. The show is SNB Today. We appreciate you being with us. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. Don't forget to rate and review as well. So thanks for being with us. All right, Mo, here we go. We can start to turn the page forward a little bit. Of course, all the conversation we had on Tuesday as we sit here on Thursday. Now it's about the Bengals coming up on Sunday. The Raiders have this tough road game ahead of their bye week, which they need badly for the injury bug that they have, but also maybe to kind of fix some things, as we've talked about here on the show. But they're getting ready for the Bengals, and I know fans, all you can do is go off the last game. So fans are still kind of stewing about this, starting to look at the future. But as they prepare for the Bengals, good news, Michael Mayer, apparently, according to Coach Antonio Pierce, closer to getting back. So that's a good sign. But when you look at this team getting ready to go into the Bengals' home lair of Paycor Stadium, Bengals aren't having a great season either, but they do present a problem for them on defense with Joe Burrow and one Mr. Jamar Chase. We now know T. Higgins might not play on Sunday. He's banged up again, so he is doubtful so far. We'll see if that changes as we get closer to game time. But what are these Raiders going to have to do to keep up with these Bengals on the road in Cincinnati on the banks of the Ohio River?
Score more than 20 points. Let's start there. Let's start with the obvious. They have to score more than 20 points. But no, seriously, I think this is another game where the Raiders could potentially get their run game going. I'm not saying it'll be Brown's game good, but the Cincinnati Bengals have had their issues up front stopping the run. We'll see if the Raiders can show some balance. We've yet to see a complete game from their offense. Of course, Brock Bowers has to be involved. He should have the most targets. He should get some red zone targets. We'll talk more about that later. But balance. I just feel like this Raider team has a chance not only to keep it close and cover as they have in the past 2 weeks, but they have a chance to pull off an upset. The Bengals are averaging 18.3 points per game over the last 3 weeks. Something's going on with their offense, and you talked about T. Higgins might miss the contest. This is a game that the Raiders could keep it close and, who knows, pull out a victory.
Yeah, and if you look at this Bengals team, too, I think some of the things that you look at from the perspective of, hey, what chance do the Raiders have? Now, the Bengals overall, when you look at their defense is really struggling, which was supposed to be one of their strengths, right? They're ranked 24th currently, and of course we know the Raiders are tied for 11th in overall defense with the Chicago Bears. So obviously the Raiders have a leg up here if they can get that offense moving. Offensively, the Bengals as well, despite the fact that Joe Burrow seems to be, I think, coming back out of that injury he had last year, and of course Jamar Chase doing so well there. And you look at them, they're 18th in offense. Of course, the Raiders are 28th in offense. The Raiders 288 yards per game, and the Bengals at 325. And the Bengals, you look at offensive touchdowns, they have 23 on the year. The Raiders just 14, which is tied for second to last in the NFL. So this Bengals team can score, but they're also going to give up a lot of points. And today, as I was looking back at the press conference from Wednesday, Antonio Pierce was asked about Zamir White, and he said, we got to get Zamir White going, and talked about maybe some of his confidence being shaken with the early fumbles early on. But my question is this to you, Mo, is you talked about this might be a great opportunity for them to get their run game on track. How much do you think that this run game is a result of the running backs not performing up to the standard that they'd like them to, or even as well as Zeus did last year, to instead the performance of the offensive line, or what's the mix there?
It's poor system fit as far as Zamir White's concerned. Alexander Madison's just an average running back. We've seen Alexander Madison, in Minnesota be an average running back behind Dalvin Cook, and after Dalvin Cook went elsewhere. So I didn't expect a whole lot from Madison. I didn't expect 1,000-yard season. That's just not who he is as a running back. They're going to have to draft their running back, their lead running back, next year, next offseason. Zamir White, I actually think he gets traded. I know Antonio Pierce, as you said we need to get Zamir White going. It's not going to work in this offense. If you're going to keep Luke Getsy in his system, Zamir White is just not going to be the running back that we saw in the last 4 weeks of the previous season. It's just it's not a fit. And I think Antonio Pierce probably understands this, but he wants to talk some confidence back into Zamir White, knowing that his confidence may be at a low point right now, but it's just not going to work with the system.
How would Josh Jacobs have fit in the system, Mo?
I can't even say that Josh Jacobs would look the way he does now in Green Bay. You have to remember that Josh Jacobs has also had his struggles with the Raiders in stretches. Now he also was a rushing champion too, and his great years and weeks. But I think you would have more rushing yards out of Josh Jacobs because he's just a better running back than Zamir White is. But that's not to say that he would look like the Josh Jacobs who won the rushing title not so long ago.
Yeah, and I just think, too, I saw a lot of fans going, well, if we would have kept I don't think – would the running game be a little better? Perhaps. But this goes back to scheme and fit and everything like that. And
blocking.
We just don't know. And blocking. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is you just don't – you could say, well, if they kept – and again, two things can be true. That was our theme last show. And this is true, too. It's like Josh Jacobs, letting him go could be a good thing. And it was good for him, too. For the Raiders, yeah, you think, well, it's a bad thing because the rushing isn't doing well. The running game is terrible for Las Vegas, but that's not because they let Josh Jacobs go. That's because of what Mo just mentioned, what you're seeing up front, what you're seeing with the running back that's not as good, and the scheme fit too. So there's a lot of things there, and one of those things, a lot of folks continue, and they tag me in their posts on X by the time they do the hashtag Fire Getsy. It's not going to happen right now, but nonetheless, you look at that, and of course, in the press conference yesterday on Wednesday, they asked him about, hey, play calling. A lot of people are talking about play calling. Are you happy with it? Have you talked to Luke Getsy about it? What's the deal? So I want to play you the clip here from Antonio Pierce and how he answered that question about Luke Getsy.
Yeah, I think it has to get better. There's been a lot of opportunities for us to score points and make opportunities. And, yeah, that's on the play caller. But then also, like I told our staff and I told our players, it's all of us. It's not – it's easy to sit here and just point the finger at Luke or myself, but, you look at O-line play, quarterbacks, the running backs, turnovers, missed blocks, missed executions on plays, alignments of details. All those things have to get cleaned up. So, yeah, it does start with the coordinator. He's got to be the one that takes the fall for that and gets most of the blame, but it is collective.
Yeah, there you go. So Mo, you see that, and it's interesting. I think he had a Freudian slip there, takes the fall, when he talked about Luke Getsy, and then, of course, he said – takes the blame, and that's everybody. And he mentioned it there. Look, with the offense, it's not one thing. It's blocking, it's scheme, it's quarterback, it's execution. And yes, while the offensive coach oversees it, and Pierce said it right there, he said, hey, it's me too, right? So they're involved with that. But what's interesting, and again, I play this clip not because it's like, oh, why didn't he say this? Why didn't he say that? Because you're not going to go out there, even if you're not happy with the performance of one of your coaches. You're not going to go out in front of the media and say, yeah, I told him he sucked and that he's going to get fired by the bye week if he doesn't fix it. You don't do that, right? But clearly, as you heard from Antonio Pierce there's some recognition. But then I also hear Pierce say, well, we just got to keep running the ball. We just got to keep running the ball. And again, that might be just sandbagging. He doesn't have to tell us what he's planning. But I do think that, again, adjustments and figuring out what you do to change things up the rest of the year just to get some improved performance has got to be at the top of the list.
Yeah, but at this point, how much can you do? If you got, and I'm not providing excuses, but you got DJ Glaze out there, you got Jackson Powers Johnson out there who's a rookie, Dylan Parham banged up. So there's only so much you can do. But as far as coming together and having the run game mesh with the running backs, what the running backs are doing, and having a consistent play calling frequency, some rhyme or rhythm. Because when I look at Raider games and their offense, you sometimes question yourself not yourself, but question Getsy multiple times is, why is he calling that in that situation? The Raiders offense doesn't have any rhythm. Calling plays is not just looking at your play call sheet and looking at a good play and like, we'll just run this play here. You have to be able to set up plays later in the quarter, later in the game. There has to be some flow to it. And I don't think there's any flow to it. And I think that's the problem with Luke Getsy. Now, you said that he had that Freudian slip. Antonio Pierce is not a dummy. He knows that this offense, if it finishes the season averaging less than 20 points per game, Luke Getsy is going to take the fall.
Yep.
And Antonio Pierce is going to be one to push him. If it means having to save his job, the offensive coordinator is going to get replaced. So there you go.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, not surprising, of course, his comments there, but certainly, lets you know that he's thinking about it. And I think that you're right, Mo. You can't really change much. I don't know. Raider Nation, I think out there is going to be, they just want to watch their team compete. And I think that you got to be used to what you're going to see here. Maybe Desmond Ridder sees some time, as we talked about last show, as we roll along here, just to see what he's got. But, I think it's a situation where, are you really trying to find a way to win games, or do you want to go out there and just play with what you got and hope for the best and then let the chips fall where they may? And I think that might be a little bit. Again, you want to call it tanking, you want to call it whatever. I don't call it that. I think it's a developmental opportunity. And now we heard on Wednesday, too, that Andre James did not practice. He's still dealing with a high ankle injury. Jackson Powers Johnson may end up starting at center in Cincinnati. We'll see how that goes again. So some more injuries there. But some other things, too, I think that are important to remember here, too, not Andre James particularly, but some of these other players. You don't want to hurry them back from injury, especially now you sit where you are at 2-6. You don't want to hurry guys back because, again, what are you hurrying for? You want them to get on the field. You want them to be healthy, but you got to really start to focus, even though you're really just touching the middle of the year. You got to focus on next year and let those guys get healthy, play with who you got, find out who's capable. And for somebody like Tom Telesco and for Antonio Pierce, should he be retained next year, they have the opportunity to find out, hey, who do I want to keep? Who showed that they would play through the difficulties and also not do, quote unquote, make business decisions, as he said earlier in the year. And those are the guys you want to keep an eye on and will play a factor in a Raider uniform going into next year.
What have I said 2 weeks ago, Scott? It's time for development.
Yes.
This is why I think the Raiders are going to make some trade moves before the deadline. You trade some players who have some value. And I know some people don't want to hear it, but names like Colton Miller, Jacoby Myers, those names are going to get thrown around before the deadline. Teams are going to be calling playoff contending teams. Now, if you're the Raiders, you have to decide, is that value enough that we're getting back so that we can build for the future, 2025 and beyond? Because that's where the Raiders are right now. It's not about making the playoffs. It's about what can we do? How do we get the building blocks so that we can turn this thing around as fast as possible?
Yeah, it's interesting, too. Some of the discussion, we're starting to see journalists that cover the Raiders and fans and folks talk about opportunities for the Raiders to perhaps trade for players. Not only trade players away, but trade for players. The name Anthony Richardson came up, and I almost fell out of my chair because I understand going for a developmental quarterback, but this is where I'm convinced, and I hear you in my head, my friend, all the time, that most people don't watch a lot of other football. Meaning, have you watched Anthony Richardson? Have you watched what's going on there? Have you heard about how he took himself out of the game because he was tired at starting quarterback as the franchise quarterback there? So I get it. I think Raider fans they want some hope. They want to look to the future. And as I said on Tuesday, and we're going to get into it next week, we're going to have some guests on to talk about some of those quarterbacks. But I did want to mention this, Mo. We had, of course, Mel Kiper. People love him or hate him, but a longtime draft analyst, prognosticator on ESPN. In his latest column on ESPN, he called the Raiders the perfect fit for one Shedeur Sanders. He says Sanders will obviously go early, and the Raiders should be near the top. I think about how new minority owner Tom Brady might impact the team's decisions. Brady was super accurate, tough, and excellent in the pocket during his career, which sounds a lot like the 6'2", 215-pound Sanders. The senior's 73.3% completion rate is fourth in the country, and his 82.3 QBR from inside the pocket is 15th. It seems like a really good fit for the Raiders that need a young starter under center. So already the draft talk, obviously Mel Kiper, that's all he does is draft, but the Shedeur Sanders and being a good fit, Tom Brady, very interesting point, because I know a lot of Raider fans, including you covering the team, talked about a lot. Everybody loves Cam Ward, right? Cam Ward's kind of the belle of the ball. But Shedeur Sanders, interesting here that we're starting to see him called a perfect fit for the Raiders.
Shout out to my guy, Luke Easterling. He writes for the Athlon Sports. And he said exactly what I was thinking. He said it's Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, and everyone else. Now, we're going to have plenty of time to dig into these prospects in the offseason. But that's where I am now. The problem, though, Scott, is where the Raiders are positioned now in the draft order.
Yeah.
They're not going to get to Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders will be off the board before the Raiders, maybe 3 picks before the Raiders are on the clock. Because the Tennessee Titans are at the bottom of the pile, and trust me, they're drafting a quarterback. The Giants are at the bottom of the pile. Trust me, they're drafting a quarterback. The Browns may be at the bottom of the pile. I understand the James Winston stuff is great. It's a great story.
That's not.
But let's be honest about the long-term future. Yeah. It's not Jameis Winston. Deshaun Watson has been a disaster since he got to Cleveland. They're at the bottom of the pile. The Carolina Panthers, the one-win Carolina Panthers who got their 1 win against the Raiders. I know they're sticking with Bryce Young right now. They're at the bottom of the pile. Believe me, they're probably going to draft a quarterback in the draft as well. So if you're looking at Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward and saying it's those two guys or nothing, you might want to adjust your expectations just a little bit and look at some more prospects unless the Raiders unless the Raiders continue losing games and some of those teams that I've mentioned start winning some football games.
Well, and I think that's why there's also some credence to your point about maybe making some trades if they don't dilute you too much, because you got to get capital. Like, because to your point, if you want one of those two guys, I mean, my guess is it's going to be 1, 2, or 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, somewhere in the top 3 picks, which the Raiders aren't near as of right now. So if you do that, you got to get as much capital to try to make a move up. If those teams, again, are willing to move down, like we saw this year with Washington and Chicago, not moving down, we're getting our quarterback. So we'll see how it goes, but it's fascinating. All right, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to get to some more talk. We'll talk about the Bengals, the game coming up later against the Bengals at Paycor Stadium in Cincinnati, Ohio. The Raiders have a chance at this one. We'll talk about that when we return here on Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast brought to you on video by our good friends at BetUS. Hey, everybody, it's Scott Branson again from Silver and Black Today to tell you about our friends at BetUS. We've been talking about them all season long. They bring you the video here on Silver and Black Today. And if you're betting your football anywhere else, guess what? You're making a mistake. Check out what you're able to do at BetUS here. I'm going to show you fantastic stuff. My new favorite thing, by the way, on BetUS, not only do you get 150% sign-up bonus up to $2,000 on your first deposit using the code YouTube150, but you also can use their new prop builder. I showed you this last week, but man, let me tell you how cool this is, because with the prop builder, you can create and look into all the different props happening around the NFL, happening around the game. And to me, that is way cool, because guess what? We like to bet the games. I tend to be a little more of a traditional bettor, going with the game, the over, the under, and stuff like that, and halves and stuff, quarters. But with the cool new prop builder, you can do this. Check this out. But look you could take all the games here, and I'm just going to use this game, the Texans and the Jets, to just example. But check this out. You have the game markets here. So the handicap to win, the Houston, the Jets on this one, the total points, all the normal stuff that you're used to, total touchdowns, double results, highest scoring quarter. But not only that, you have game props. Check this out. You can go through this and pick and build whatever you want with it seems like an unending list of cool stuff around the props, including, for example, passing yards. Aaron Rodgers over 232, under 232. CJ Stroud over for him, right? So you could do that. You could bet money on each individual prop, submit that bet, confirm, there you go. Or you can parlay them together as well. So that's what the new prop builder on BetUS does. And I'll tell you what, if you guys aren't already on there, you got to make sure you check it out. And again, thanks to your special code that you can only get here on Silver and Black today. Guess what? You get 150% sign-up bonus. That's right, 150% sign-up bonus using the promo code YouTube150, YouTube150. Not only that, but they'll give you 125% on your second and third deposit up to $2,000 from BetUS. And I'll tell you what, you can't beat that. So you guys got to check it out and make sure that you are getting in tune with us here, and check out the new prop builder. You can see right there, and it's fantastic from our friends at BetUS. Again, the code is 150% sign-up bonus. Use the code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. Start playing today. BetUS, where the games begin. The official sportsbook of Silver and Black today. Welcome back, Scott Moe. We're here keeping you company. Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast covering the Las Vegas Raiders. Also heard on the radio. So hello to everybody in Las Vegas on KDON 101.5 FM, as well as 98.5 The Bet. Thanks for being with us. And our video brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. So make sure you go there and get our special offer, as we told you about during the break, 150% sign-up bonus up to $2,000 on your first deposit. YouTube150 is the code. YouTube150 is that bad boy code that you get that extra money. So there you go. We're talking Raiders versus Bengals here, week 9. Mo, look at this team. We talked about it in the first segment, the Raiders and the offense. Obviously, the offensive situation here. You're playing a low-rated defense. I mentioned the Bengals 24th in the NFL in overall defense. For the Raiders to go into Cincinnati, which is going to have great weather, it's not going to be too cold, so the Raiders don't have to worry about that issue. They're going to come in here and be able to what? Are they going to be able to run the ball against this defense? Because they haven't been able to really do it against anybody else, so why would the Bengals be different?
I think you're going to have to, we talked about this, I think last month, throw to set up the run. And that's their best bet, because the Bengals defense has issues all across. It's not just up front with the defensive front. They also have injuries in their secondary. Teams have been able to throw the ball on the Cincinnati Bengals. I know the Raiders are nowhere close to the Eagles, but the Eagles, that game was over last week with the Bengals within quarters because the Eagles were going up and down the field on them. But this is why I wanted the Raiders to experiment more with Desmond Ridder. Because a lot of times when you look at mobile quarterbacks, it's easier. It's a lot. I won't say easier, but you get more out of the run game when you have a quarterback who can threaten defenses on the ground as well. So when Luke Getsy was with Chicago, Khalil Herbert had a productive 2-year stretch. Who was the quarterback? Justin Fields. There's a threat of him using his legs. When you add a quarterback who can use his legs, it gives the defenders something else to think about after the snap, and it can help your ground attack.
Yeah, and I think, too, you look at the situation against the Bengals as well. They're banged up on defense, too, up front as well, so that'll help. And I think this is the kind of game where you to your point, Brock Bowers has to be involved in every game. We know that. But in this situation, I think they have an opportunity to set up that run, like you said, with that short pass, with Brock Bowers, and utilizing that. But also, look, Trey Tucker's coming home, right? He went to Cincinnati. This is kind of a little bit of a homecoming from a college perspective for him. I think, some of these quick passes, some of these quick slants from the slot position as well with those short passes, and get him involved because, again, he touches the ball. If he gets any space at all, he's got the speed to get away, and then they're going to have to account for that, and then the Raiders have an opportunity to perhaps run the ball a little more. Talk about that, too, because I think Trey Tucker and Jacoby Myers both should play prominently in this game, even if it's not the long pass, just maybe finding some creativity, getting some motion, getting some really quick hitters to those fast guys on the outside.
Well, if you watched the game last week, getting the ball to Trey Tucker wasn't a Luke Getsy problem. It was the Gardner Minshew problem.
Yes.
He wasn't getting there were times where he could have got the ball to Trey Tucker. He just didn't let it go.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm saying. When you have a quarterback out there who's just not seeing the field or just not letting it go to his first or second read, you go to the next quarterback.
Yeah,
We'll get
you have
somebody
to.
else with a quick. We'll get somebody else with a quick trigger if you're not going to hit your easy targets. You got to get the layup completions. If you don't get the layup completions, you get behind in the sticks, you get behind in the schedule, and now you're stuck with 3rd and 8. Then the defense knows you have to throw the ball. Unless you're Luke Getzey, you might run it up the middle for some unknown reason. But you gotta get those easy layup completions, and you can get those to Trey Tucker, get the ball to him in space, and let him make some big plays on the after the catch.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating there too. And then you look at the offense of the Bengals. So when you look at the Raiders defense, and what the Raiders have struggled with a little bit too has been the running game, not the strength of the Bengals offense. Obviously, when you look at Joe Burrow, almost 2,000 yards now, he's basically hitting 70% of his passes and averaging almost 8 yards a pass. He's got 15 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. He's been sacked 19 times too, which is pretty big. And then you look at Jamar Chase sitting there with 674 yards as well. But the running game for them, while much better than the Raiders, I mean, you have Chase Brown averaging 4.6 per carry with Joe Burrow with a lot less carries, obviously, but averaging 4.4. So you don't have really anybody running the ball for them. So for the Raiders defense, it's going to be a nice test for that really good, young, developing defensive backfield.
It should be, and this is why I don't think the Bengals will run away with this game. I watch the Raiders get blown out after I say that, but especially if T. Higgins is not playing. I know they have other guys who can catch the football, but the Bengals are sort of one-dimensional. I think that's part of their issue is that they depend so much on Burrow in that passing game, his connection with Jamar Chase. They don't have any balance, just like the Raiders don't have any balance, but the difference is they have a quality quarterback and an elite wide receiver, which the Raiders don't have. So that's what gives the Bengals their advantage. But this is, again, I look at the Raiders defense and I say it's a lot better than what people give it credit for. When you look at the cornerback group, when you look at the secondary period, when you look at the pass rush, even without Malcolm Kuntz and Christian Wilkins, Max Crosby can still wreak havoc, and then they can muddy up the game. But as I said earlier, the Raiders are still going to have to get over that 20-point threshold, and they haven't been able to do that really in competitive football games since they went east to play the Baltimore Ravens in Week 2.
Yeah, and it's one of those games where I think the Raiders, especially going into the bye week, if you could perhaps sneak out of Cincinnati with a win, or at least keep it very competitive, where you can walk out of there feeling better because your offense performed better. To me, that's what you have to be at. To your point about being in the developmental season now, I think that's the thing. And fans want to win games, and I get it. Although some of you now want to lose games because you want a quarterback. But to me, I if I'm watching the game as a fan, I want to be able to say, okay, maybe we didn't win, or maybe we did, but we were able to run the ball more. We saw our team do this, be able to actually not turn the ball over from the quarterback position, for example, or to just establish the run a little bit. And I think those small little things, while they might not exactly float your boat because you're disappointed in the season, that's what you have to do. And I think you also need to, we spent a lot of time here, Mo, talking about the coaching staff, not only Luke Getzey, but of course Antonio Pierce and the struggles he's had with time management and game management and all of those decision-making processes. So you want to see him do better too, right? You want to see him make good decisions, even if they don't necessarily always result in a victory.
I'll be looking specific at the offensive line, so because I guess you want to see the development out of Trey Tucker, but you kind of know that Alexander Madison is not the long-term running back there. You already know Zamir White's not the long-term running back there. I'll be looking at Jackson Powers-Johnson and DJ Glaze, because those could be two guys who are the building blocks for your offensive line that help protect your quarterback and help open up lanes for whoever is the starting running back for the future. So usually people, when they watch football games, they're watching the quarterback.
Oh, hold on.
They're watching.
Sorry. I had my dog and cat going at it down here in the studio. Apologies for interrupting you. Go ahead, Mo.
Most people are watching the quarterback and the football. I'll be watching the line of scrimmage and how those young offensive linemen, a second rounder and a third rounder, both rookies, develop and hopefully play well.
Yeah, I mean that's true, and the Jackson Powers-Johnson thing I'm interested in, because if he does end up playing center, as mentioned, then watching him there, because we might see that's where he ends up. I mean, the idea that he plays there, they signed Andre James, of course. Jackson Powers Johnson was selected by Tom Telesco, so he was there. That's his guy, and I'm really interested to watch that, because if he really starts to do well there for any extended period of time, if Andre James is out, then you might start to see him develop into that position and retain that position as you look at next year, which means the Raiders may be in the search for another guard again, or with the players they have switching guys around. That, to me, what they do with that offensive line, what improvement we can see, and any consistency, because that's what we haven't seen either, is any consistency there. And to me, that's a huge storyline here to watch, because it's not sexy, but both trenches, both sides of the trenches, I should say, offense, defensive line, is massively important when you're building your team. So the Raiders need to solidify that, especially, Mo, if they do bring in a young quarterback, guess what? They need guys to protect him there. And so you'd like to see them the rest of the season develop, not only in the pass rush, but also with the run blocking too.
Offensive line is the nucleus of your offensive system. If you can't block, if you can't open lanes for your running back, it's not going anywhere. You can have Jayden Daniels back there and be able to run, but eventually that quarterback has to be able to win from the pocket. You can't do that with a collapsing unit around you. So Jackson Powers Johnson, DJ Glaze, we hope Dylan Parham heals up from his injuries so he gets back on the field, because those three guys could definitely be the nucleus of your offensive future. Now we'll see what happens with Colton Miller. A lot of fans want to ship him out. I still say you keep Colton Miller there and you draft his successor, similar to what the Raiders did with Donald Penn. Yeah. Now Donald Penn was much older, but I think you keep Colton Miller there and you develop his successor as he's starting.
Yeah, and I think too, because I think a lot of people are saying that about Colton Miller because he's had some struggles, right? I mean, he came off the injury, the surgery in the offseason. But then that scheme, just sometimes it's difficult for people to adjust to it, or it's not the right scheme for them, even offensive linemen. So that might be a case there too. So we'll see if that changes next year as well. The GM, Tom Telesco, and Antonio Pierce might be saying, okay, well, yeah, don't trade him, because we think when we go back to a different system, if that's what they do, then he can regain his form. So we'll see how that all works out. But it'll be fascinating to watch how this offensive line can perform and maybe start to put it together a little more for this team moving forward. Okay, we are going to take our final break here on Silver and Black today. When we come back, we're going to get to your phone calls. Yes, that's right. It is time for the Raider Nation mailbag here on Silver and Black today. Your calls, 702-900-7869, 702-900-7869 is the number to be a part of it. You can leave a message or a text message and be a part of the next show. We'll come back. It's Mo and Scott. This is Silver and Black today, brought to you by, on video, our good friends at BetUS. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
Enough of hearing us talk about the Raiders. It's time to hear from you.
Any Oakland Raider fan, Las Vegas Raider fan, stand up.
On this edition of the Raider Nation Mailbag.
That black hole rocking and rolling.
Don't be a wallflower. Be a part of the show. Leave your question or message by calling 702-900-7869. That's 702-900-7869. Or drop us an email at mail@silverandblacktoday.com.
Yes, sir. Welcome back, Silver and Black today. It's time for the Raider Nation mailbag on this edition of the show. Again, if you want to be a part of it, 702-900-7869. That's 702-900-7869. Leave your message, your name, where you're calling from, and your question or comment. Try to make it as pithy as possible. Get to the point. Go on. We love it. And so thank you for that. You can also text it to us. So if you're shy and you don't want to have your voice on the air, guess what? You can text it to us. By the way, big shout out to our buddies at BetUS for bringing you the video. And again, don't forget the 150% deposit bonus. YouTube 150 is the promo code. Get 150% sign up bonus up to $2,000 and start playing today. Oh yeah, get out there. How you doing on your bets? You're doing pretty good, right, Mo?
I'm always doing pretty good on my bets. Mm-hmm. Always. I'm always in the green.
Last week I picked some. When you were gone, I picked some games here in the spots in the live reads for BetUS, and it was brutal. I mean, people were joking with me on X. It was like, dude, your picks. I said, yeah. I mean, it was one game. I was betting on one game. It was the Buffalo game, and so they were giving it to me, and I was like, hey, it was a stinker. I mean, I had no doubt about it. It hit me right in the wallet.
Sky, I leave you here for the bets alone by yourself for one day, and this is what happens.
See what happens?
One day, Scott.
See what happens? Yes. It was terrible. That's why we need you here. All right. Silver and Black today, of course, Odyssey Sports Original Podcast. Make sure you guys subscribe wherever you get your audio. Don't forget to rate and review. Okay, we're going to go out to Chicago first. Yes, Raider Nation is everywhere. All you need to do is listen to this show and know this because we get calls from all over the country, all over the world. Here's Joe in Chicago with our first call up here on the Raider Nation Mailbag.
Hey, guys. It's Joe from Chicago. I called in a couple weeks ago asking you all to give me a reason for hope for the rest of the year, and I was going to call in this week to update you on my progress through the stages of grief. I was at acceptance, feeling pretty good about things, and Luke Getsy has this talent for just infuriating me. And I want to clear up something, because, Scott, I think you've mentioned this. Q Myers talks about this every time on every show, and Hondo talked about it last night, that, we don't want to wish unemployment on anybody. This man has a family. Right. This man makes 7 figures a year. This is not the guy at the corner store who is putting in 16 hours days to try to eke it out, for his family. He's going to be fine. Unless he's as bad with financial planning as he is with running my favorite football team, he's going to be okay. He will find his level. He will wash up at a Division III school where he'll be an offensive genius. So, one thing that I am grateful for and that I keep coming back to when I get worked up is in the offseason there was talk about Aaron Rodgers coming here to reunite with Devontae. And I am so unironically deeply grateful to the universe that did not happen. Can you imagine if we had this prima donna in Las Vegas sitting at 2-6 talking about how he has found a fountain of youth by drinking cayenne pepper and water? I'm so grateful that didn't happen. With Devontae gone, now the two of those are free to drink all the raw milk and talk all the flat earth they want to, and we're $100 million under the cap. And I'm trying just to focus on that and focus on the positive. So if other people who are struggling, we could have Aaron Rodgers here. So love you guys. That's where I'm at this week. Feeling pretty okay, but Getsy just is really messing with my serenity. Love you guys. Love the show. Thank you.
What a great call from Joe in Chicago. There's so many great points.
Chicago.
And I'll tell you,
I think.
Go ahead.
No, I think Joe in Chicago, I'm sure he's heard all about. I think he said this on the first call. He said he called a few weeks ago. I'm not sure, Joe, but let us know. I think you've heard all about Luke Getsy being in Chicago from Bears fans.
Yes, he talked about it.
And I say this a million times. Bears, as soon as the Raiders hired Luke Getsy, I had a handful of Bears fans in my DM saying, you are not going to like this hire. And I said, I already know. I've watched a fair number of Bears games, probably more than I should have. Because full admission, I do like Justin Fields. I think you could develop him into a serviceable quarterback. Can he be great? Is he Jalen Hurts? No. But I watched a lot of Bears games for that reason. I wanted to see his development. And I'm like, who is this offensive coordinator?
Yeah.
This guy is not a good offensive coordinator, and he turns out to be the Raiders offensive coordinator months later. And I understand Luke Getsy gets you worked up, Joe, but if my thoughts come to fruition, I don't think he'll be the offensive coordinator for the Raiders in 2025 unless there's some miraculous turnaround where all of a sudden Alexander Madison looks like Adrian Peterson and the offense is all of a sudden percolating and scoring 25, 26, 27 points per game.
Yeah, probably not going to happen. I think you're pretty safe with that. But you're right, though. When the hire, it was a fart in church hire. It really was. I mean, you go back to it, people try to make themselves feel better about it. Somebody told me, well, remember how he beat the crap out of the Raiders? And were the Raiders a very good team last year? No. Who cares?
No, I'm sorry, Scott, not to cut you off, but the one thing that people kept trying to tell me to talk me off the ledge or try to convince me that Luke Getsy was a good hire was his job as a passing game coordinator. And I told those people the Packers split up their play calling duties. So even as a passing game coordinator, you're not in control of all of the passing game. You may be just in control of third down or the 2-minute drill or certain scenarios. I'm not buying into, oh, well, he did well as a passing game coordinator with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams in their prime years. That's not a good sell. That's not enough of a good sell for me to say, yeah, he's going to be a good play caller on his own. We saw his work in Chicago as an offensive coordinator. You can't ignore that.
Again, especially with a defensive coach, a head coach, who comes from the defensive side of things. So absolutely. By the way, I want to correct myself because I was in error, I think multiple times over the last several weeks. We were talking about who on the staff could take over if Luke Getsy, let's say, was let go during the bye. And I said there's nobody else on there with play calling experience that you'd like. And I talked about Edgar Bennett. Edgar Bennett was the offensive coordinator in Green Bay. So he did call plays in Green Bay for a couple years, 2015, 17, I think it was. So we had one of our listeners correct me on that, Mo. And I looked it up, and sure enough, he did. He was the offensive coordinator. Now, the head coach might have had play calling duties as well, but he was the offensive coordinator. So I just want to make sure I correct.
But there's a difference between being an offensive coordinator, though, and being the play caller. You could be an offensive coordinator. Doesn't mean you're calling the play. So Sean McVay with the Los Angeles Rams is the head coach, and he's the play caller.
Yes.
But his offensive coordinator is not calling the plays.
Yes. It was just like when Gruden was the coach, right? And you had
Greg Olson.
Greg Olson was the offensive coordinator, but he did not call plays. And so you look at that, and so Edgar Bennett, I don't believe he called plays in Green Bay. I'm looking it up again. There's
a difference.
Yes,
let's just make sure
because Mike McCarthy was the head coach, and he actually called plays. So
right.
There you go.
Right.
So there you go.
Right.
Looked it up now. And Luke Getsy was that's when he was gone to Mississippi State. So there you go. Anyway, but thank you for your correction because he was offensive coordinator, but he didn't play call. So I was partly wrong, and you were and thank you for that. I appreciate it. No, it's good. I love when our listeners come and say, "Hey, Scott, you said this at this mark." They even gave me the time mark. It's like, cool. I love it. Thank you so much for that. So all good. All right, on to our next call. This is John in San Diego. Here's John.
Scott, Mo, this is Johnny in San Diego, heading north on the 15. Scott, Mo, I think you guys were hitting on something regarding the 35 coaches that's on the Raiders staff. I think Q just dropped a nugget. There's a report out there that says that Marvin Lewis, maybe Philbin, and I forgot the other senior defensive consultant, are just picking up checks. They're not even helping AP. They're not even sharing that wisdom. And it makes sense because you don't see those guys integrated into like the sideline. You don't see them talking to anybody. At least Marvin Lewis. I mean, he's looking like I don't know, like he's daydreaming out there. He's not looking at anybody. He's not engaging anybody. So I don't know what's going on there, but it's starting to add up. So you might come across that report when your next show drops. So hopefully we can, you guys can touch on that. The other thing, this is my 2-minute review of the top 4 quarterbacks that I have coming out in next year's draft. So Shador, of course, number 1, Cam, number 2. Number 3, I like Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart. He's coming from a pro offense with Lane Kiffin. And number 4, I like Drew Aller. Big dude from Penn State. And his OC is a 1-year guy. Came from, I think, from Houston. No, Kansas. So Kansas was running all those crazy route trees. Now he's the OC for Penn State, and you see how they use all their guys when they beat SC and how they're beating up teams offensively. So those are my guys there. And Shador, going back to my idea of just bringing the OC from college, guess who Shador's OC is? Pat Shurmur, old school NFL offensive coordinator from back in the day. You bring that guy, and if you can't get that guy, you get a veteran guy, maybe like Frank Wright. I always liked Frank Wright back in the day. So maybe just have a guy that doesn't really look to be a head coach, and just be that offensive guy who can stay with the team for a while and just groom his quarterback. That's my 2 cents there. Yeah, another loss. Well, what else can we do? We're going for that top 5 pick. No problem there. They fought. No running game. And please, put in Ritter. I mean, everybody says you only need a week to go over the playbook. Put in Ritter, please. Just start him already. Minshew is out of here. He's done. All right, Scott.
Oh, there you go. He cut off. 29 coaches, to be exact, the Raiders have. 29. I just want to make sure by the end of the year, we're going to say they got 56 coaches. Well, you could add Max Crosby in there, right? No, just kidding. But on on offense, 3, 6, 9, 12. Actually, and if you count Matt Shelton, the game management coach, it's 13. And Marvin Lewis, 14. Now, he's assistant head coach. So that's not just offense. But so you have 13 offensive coaches and 29 coaches overall. Is that what I said? 29, 26. 26. So there you go. Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot. So, but John, I mean, hey, look, we're going to look at the quarterbacks. And I think, even some folks who follow the quarterback market in college have said that this is not going to be a really good draft class. But remember, the year before last, it was supposed to be a great draft class, and none of those guys have made any difference. You look at this year, it's just a crapshoot, Mo. You just don't know what experts say. I'm not in any way criticizing them because they study it more than I do, but half the time it's right, half the time it's wrong.
I don't get worked up about quarterback prospects until about February, March, because it seems like every year there's a strong opinion about the quarterback class, and it turns out being the opposite. Mm-hmm. Remember the 2021 quarterback class was supposed to be fantastic, right?
Oh, yeah.
Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson's in that class. Mac Jones could go top 10. He all of this other stuff. I just don't get worked up until first of all, until the college season is over. I want to see the complete season before I pass judgment. I don't know, the banter is fun, but I just don't dig into it until the college season is over. I will address what Johnny said really quick about the report, because I want to give proper credit to Tony Paulino of Sportskeeda, who put that report out about the players taking note of some of the senior coaches on that staff just picking up checks. The 2 names that were mentioned, Marvin Lewis and Rob Ryan. I'll just say the names since the report is out there. You can read it for yourself from Tony Paulino of Sportskeeda. He named those guys specifically in the report. AP is probably going to have to downsize and or change his coaching staff if he is retained in 2025.
No doubt about it. All right. Thanks for the call, John, in San Diego. Now we go to T. Dougie. Here's T. Dougie out in Cali.
Hey, Scott. Hey, Mo. This is T. Dougie in California. Just contemplating another loss with the Raiders. And, I'm thinking about the last 2 weeks with the Raiders defense. I see effort, and I think that is a good sign. But what I was pretty shocked about was that they're the 11th ranked defense, according to those commentators, which to me, the 8 weeks of football, that's pretty good. I mean, I didn't think we were ranked 11th, but apparently we are. So I just wonder what this defense would have looked like with some of our key players playing. I mean, if we're 11th with this beat-up defense, how much better would they be with Wilkins and Kuntz, etc., maybe some upgrade at talent. So that's something to think about. And, I still don't like the way AP manages the game. Luke Getsy has to go. There's no doubt in my mind. But, maybe through the year, as AP continues to grow, a new offensive coordinator and a quarterback, and you get some key defensive players back, a fourth year in, the same system, maybe, this team looks a lot different next year. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but that's something to think about. Keeping the defense the same, continuity is key, and maybe you get a splash on the offense. But let me know what you think. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, T. Dougie. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, Mo, this defense, we said it earlier in the season, they look good, but we didn't think they'd be top 10. Well, they're almost there, despite the injuries. How good can this defense still be? As he mentioned, if you get a Christian Wilkins back, you get Kuntz back, you get some of these guys back playing at their best, it could be pretty special.
Still could be a top 10 unit. The Raiders actually are doing better in defending the run, if you haven't noticed over the past couple of weeks as well. And this is, again, without Christian Wilkins, without Malcolm Kuntz. injuries all over. The offense not doing much to help the defense get off the field. Stay off the field on the sideline. So for what it's worth, if you want to look for the silver lining, yeah, the defense I think could be a lot better. Statistics wise, if the offense holds up its end of the bargain. I would hope that the Raiders are going to bring back Malcolm Kuntz on the cheap deal because season-ending injury, didn't play a snap this year. Going to be a free agent though, so they can get him back at a reduced price. And we're still waiting for Tyree Wilson to show something with some consistency. I know he has his. I was going to say I know he has some splash plays here and there, but if he can make a notable leap and have some, let's see where it's got consistency, then you have a 4-man pass rush.
Yes.
You got Max Crosby, you got Christian Wilkins, you get Malcolm Kuntz back, Tyree Wilson. All of a sudden now your defensive front is what we thought it could be this year with all of those guys healthy. Yeah. Now you just need continuity in the secondary. You resign Nate Hobbs, you have Ja'Cory Bennett developing. It'll look pretty good all over.
Yeah, and with Tyree Wilson, if he could perform as well as a second-round pick, it would be amazing, right? I mean, I know he was a high first-round pick. I get it. But if he was consistent enough where if he was a second-round pick, you'd be like, man, this kid's good. It would be huge for this Raider team, to your point, having those 4 up front. And so, yeah, so you have to look at that. When you look at it, and we had our discussion a couple of weeks ago about rebuilding this team, what does it look like, how far are they away, and all that. You look at that defense. If you had a competent offense right now, you might be at 500 or better. I mean, just think about it. I mean, you might be because your defense has put the Raiders in positions to score, to win games, and they just couldn't do it. So we'll see how that goes. But not that everything's always perfect, and you gotta look at contract situations and all that stuff coming up. But at least you like the direction. You see it there. You see the progression, even with injuries. People were writing me this week excusing the Raiders losing because of injuries. Oh, on defense. I said, yeah, but their defense is doing great. It has nothing to do with that. That has nothing to do with, calling timeouts when they call timeouts, or not being aggressive when they should be aggressive, and being docile when they should be more aggressive. It's just, that's how it works. But anyway, good call, T. Dougie. We appreciate it very much. All right, now we're going out. And again, it's one of those callers where the only reason I'm playing this, because you didn't leave your name, is I know this is one of our regular callers. I kind of wanted to say it's South Florida Raider, but I don't think it is. It could be, but I have my doubts. But it is a caller who calls in a lot, and so I wanted to make sure our last call here today is that caller because it's a good one. So here's unknown person. Make sure you comment on YouTube.
Unknown person.
Tell us, unknown silver and black today all-star caller, because I know your voice. I just don't know your name. So make sure you leave your name next time. Here we go.
Hey, Scott and Mo. Tuesday night here. I'm just watching you guys on YouTube. And I really don't understand why people are trying to protect AP. I've been watching football for over 40 years. I played competitive sports for over 20 years. It is clearly this man is lost on the sidelines. Now my question to you guys, what does AP do? Because he is clearly on the sidelines with his headset on, but his thing above his mouth. So, is he just listening to people? Because it looks like he's just a spectator on the sidelines. That's exactly what I'm looking at. And he has the audacity to throw players under the bus with execution. You're not going to tell me he's losing the locker room. Because if somebody that makes as many mistakes as he does with all the coaches and former coaches, I mean, are they just getting a free check there, like a free ride? Because how can you do the same thing over and over and over again thinking you're going to get a different result? That's insanity. Now, there is no way I want this coaching staff moving forward with a high draft pick quarterback because they're terrible. And I guarantee you this, mark it down. If Antonio Pierce is the head coach next year, we will be losers again. He has no credibility. Okay, he was an all right player. That's not like he ain't no Hall of Fame player, okay? He was around good players too. You know what I mean? All he knew how to do, from what I'm looking at it, is he had a mouthpiece. Now it ran out. Look at the team. They're flat. You know, they're undisciplined. It's sad. It's sad because he was quick to throw his players under the bus, but yet not this sad-ass coaching staff. Just give me the input on what I asked you guys. From a fan that's been seeing football longer than Antonio Pierce has been alive. Thank you guys. Great show. Keep up the good work. Johnny out.
Johnny,
Florida,
that's
Cali.
right.
Johnny.
That's right. Johnny North. It was at the end of the call. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Well, he's not happy with Antonio Pierce. And we've talked about this a lot. And you and I have taken heat. And I say heat. People don't like that conversation. A lot of people have said, no, you got to give it time. You can't fire another coach and this and that. What about what Johnny said, though? I mean, I never really put one-on-one together with the headpiece and the thing. I don't know. He might be talking on it. We just don't see it because he's not on TV the whole time. But, I mean, I think he's expressing a lot of what I've heard from fans who are not happy with how things are going.
So I'm going to get to the crux of Johnny's question. Basically, his question is, what does Antonio Pierce do on game day? Because, okay, we know this. Antonio Pierce is not calling plays for the offense because he's a defensive-minded coach. He's not calling plays for the defense because that's Patrick Graham's job. Antonio Pierce is, I think you use this phrase, a CEO-type head coach. So he's in charge of the game flow. You know, so you claim if you complain about the timeout usage, how the Raiders use their timeouts, what they do on fourth down, that's his job. Players subbing in and out, certain packages you're supposed to use in certain scenarios. He can offer his suggestions there, but again, he's not the play caller. That's what he's supposed to do. So anyone who has complaints about the way the Raiders use their timeouts, the game flow, that's on Antonio Pierce because he's not calling plays. It's not his job. He's not a coordinator. He's not a play caller. So if you're expecting these players to have some discipline and you're expecting to have some rhythm to your football team, that's on Antonio Pierce. If you don't feel the Raiders are motivated, that's on Antonio Pierce. That was supposed to be his calling card, that Antonio Pierce is supposed to be able to motivate these guys to give it their all. And I think we said this in the offseason, Scott, that we should never question the Raiders' effort.
Right.
And again, it shocked me that 3 weeks into the season, we were questioning their effort after that loss to the Carolina Panthers.
And so was their coach. So was he.
Right. So was he. So that was the first red flag. But if you're a type of person, Johnny, you can answer this on your next call. If you're the type of fan that wants the Raiders to have a head coach who's calling plays specifically for the offense for your young rookie quarterback, Antonio Pierce is never going to be your guy because that's not what he is as a head coach. He's the type of head coach that fits into the same mold as a John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh with the Baltimore Ravens is not calling plays.
Right. Yeah, and so, I mean, and that's what we've brought up, and I still have my doubts, and I do understand, and there is a point when people say, okay, you can't just keep firing coaches, but I will say this. So are you going to keep a coach? We talk about, having continuity. Well, if you're continuously bad, and I know it's only 1 year, but stick with me. If somebody doesn't do the job well and doesn't show improvement over the course of 1 year, do you repeat the same mistake in the guise of continuity? I don't think you do. I used Houston as an example, where they finally got D'Amico Ryans, who came in, and yes, they got the quarterback too. Don't get me wrong. They got the right offensive coordinator in Slowick. They got all these guys together at the same time, but they realized their mistakes. I'm not saying it wasn't a dumpster fire before that, because it was. But if you're going to tell me that you should double down on your mistake, if it's a mistake, and again, my pet peeve now has become, Dan Campbell went 3-13, Mo. And it's like, Dan Campbell, folks, I'm going to tell you why it's different. You ready, Mo? You can help me on this one too, because I saw you exchanging information with people on this too. Dan Campbell was a NFL coach for 8 years. He was also an assistant head coach under Sean Payton in New Orleans for, I think, 4 years. A lot of experience coaching in the NFL. Also, I went back and looked coverage stories. The Lions, when they went 3-13, that was primarily because their roster was terrible. Okay, it wasn't because they were mismanaging games or calling plays that questioned his ability to coach. It was not that. Yes, they went 3-13, and yes, they had terrible plays. They lost terrible games, but it wasn't the same reason. So don't compare apples with oranges. I get the comparison at the base level. And I'm not saying that it's not a good thing to say, hey, well, some guys struggle in their first year. Absolutely correct. We knew, Mo and I did, right? And a lot of people knew he would struggle in his first year, and that's okay. But when you struggle and you learn and you adapt and you get better over time, great. That's where I think the comparison falls flat.
You know where else the comparison is questionable? You know what else Dan Campbell did? He had Ben Johnson on his staff. So when I asked Raider fans
in the second year, though, people will say, "Well, he had him on
right,
staff already."
But he had him on staff. He was a position coach. He was
Right.
promoted after Anthony Lynn was fired.
Correct.
So what Dan Campbell did after the first year, and the Lions did after their first year, within their first year, they fired their offensive coordinator. They hired that young, brilliant mind who is now known as Ben Johnson to be their offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the brilliant young mind that Antonio Pierce has on his staff that he can elevate if he fires Luke Getsy? There's a bunch of older coaches, as Johnny suspects, and as I talked about the report from Sportskeeda Tony Pauline, there are a bunch of older senior coaches who are seemingly collecting checks. Antonio Pierce has to be able to hire a coaching staff. That's part of being a head coach, is building a quality coaching staff. And for right now, it just looks like a bunch of older guys who, as the reports are saying, are just picking up checks.
Yeah.
That is another problem. That's another stark difference.
And again, this is not, for those of you who get caught up in your feels, this is not hating on somebody. This is just evaluating based on my perception. Look, I'm not an expert, okay? So you could dismiss my opinion all you want. That's your right. I'm okay with that. I have a lot of people I respect who tell me I'm wrong and say, no, you just need to give AP this. I just disagree. I think we're seeing it now. I don't know. Everybody's absolving him of the quarterback situation. Well, no, he said it was by committee. And I asked the question again. Well, if a coach is making decisions by committee, is he really a head coach? I mean, is that really what you want? You want somebody who can't make their own mind up as the head guy on the football field and has to go and ask for help on this and that and this and that? If that's what you want, then great. And people have thrown things at me that make a lot of sense and say, well, AP does this. I saw some folks say, well, he's really not that bad of a coach. And I'm like, well, the record and his resume on the grass say otherwise. So, well, if you get rid of Luke Getsy, he'll be great. Really? I don't know that. He chose Luke Getsy. So, yeah, it's just, look, it's all bad. Let's hope that he does pull out of it. Let's hope that Antonio Pierce shows us in the second half learning and growing, and he does a great job and he retains his job next year, and then he does get a good offensive coordinator. I mean, that's the best scenario for everybody involved.
I just want to say this again, and I want to underline part of being a head coach is building a quality coaching staff. So again, if he's going to fire Luke Getsy, who is the next brilliant mind on that staff that he can promote, as Dan Campbell did in Detroit? Now, I want to end it with this and say, look, I've been consistent on this Antonio Pierce issue. And I want to say this very clearly again. I would not fire Antonio Pierce in the middle of the season.
Right.
I would evaluate everything, the coaching staff included, after the season is over. Can I upgrade over Antonio Pierce? Is there a better head coach who wants the job? That's the question I will be asking myself, and that's the decision I would be making if it was my decision to make.
Right.
Just want to close it on that.
It goes back to the only issue we had with his hiring, which was, why didn't you talk to other people? I saw you having that conversation with somebody this week as well, which is like, hey, I was fine with them selecting him if they interviewed other people, but they didn't. They interviewed 2 people off the couch, and that was it. So we'll see how it all ends up. Hopefully, like you said, hopefully it all goes good. I had somebody ping me today, should fire him and have Marvin Lewis be the head coach. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think that's a good idea. Just me, though. Just me. So anyway, but thank you all for the calls. We appreciate it. Again, if you want to be a part of the next show, 702-900-7869 is the number. And we will be back with you on Sunday after the Bengals Raiders game for a post-game show. Myself and Murph. And then, Mo, you have your Bleacher Report live. Tell everybody else what you got coming up the rest of this week as we sit here on Thursday.
Sportsnet piece is up. My predictions for the Raiders before the trade deadline. So I think they could actually be sellers and buyers. I think they can bring in some young guys and also trade off some guys that can bring them quality premium, maybe premium draft capital before they go into the 2025 all season and they start their fifth rebuild in a decade.
Amazing. Yes. And stick with it, guys. I mean, hey, you're all fans. Raider Nation till you die, right? So stick with it. Hopefully there's brighter days around the horizon. All right, my friend. Take care. We'll see you on Tuesday.
Take care, Scott. Take care, Raider Nation.
All right. For our producer, Mike Robier, for Mo Moten, I'm Scott Branson. We'll see you Sunday night after the game. Also, do us a favor. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. Look for Silver and Black today. And don't forget, please rate and review for us. We appreciate that as well. Also, a big thank you again to our sponsor on the video side. That is the great folks at BetUS who bring you the video each and every time. Until next time, Raider Nation, take care. We will talk to you soon. All right.